Hello everybody, and welcome back to my War Thunder tips and tricks series. Today we're going to be looking at Solid Shot and how to specifically use and excel with Solid Shot. Now, trust me, I know, Solid Shot is not the easiest thing in the world to use, and a lot of the time, even I struggle to use it because it just isn't super great. Under most, if not all circumstances, there is a better round that isn't Solid Shot. And the problem is that Solid Shot is very common at early tiers and especially on US and British vehicles in particular. Um, they on the British vehicles, they literally are the only type of round you're going to get. The British do not have heat rounds. The British do not have they don't have APHE rounds, and it isn't really till the very late tier that you're going to get a HESH round. So if you play the British, you better learn in this video because otherwise it's a sink or swim situation. And if you sink with Solid Shot, you really can't play the British. You won't do well. So I think what we need to talk about first is kind of what is Solid Shot and what is it good for and what is it bad for. Um, and technically, Solid Shot is any solid piece of metal or combinations of metals or alloys. It's basically anything that doesn't have an explosive inside of it. Things like heat, HESH, APHE, um, heat FS, stuff that isn't uh, just a solid piece of metal. These are not Solid Shot. Solid Shot is going to be your AP, APC, APCBC, APCR, APDS, and heat APDSFS. Sorry. Uh, these are your main types of Solid Shot. I do want to note that APC and APCBC very commonly have an HE core, and that is not a Solid Shot. Basically, if you look at the stat card and you see no explosive in it, it's not a heat shell and it's not a HESH shell. Um, that is a Solid Shot shell. Uh, and in general, things that you learn in this video will apply to other types of ammunition. You can certainly use this with APHE rounds, heat rounds, HESH rounds to extent, um, and you'll do just fine. Most of what we're going to be talking about is where to aim and what these rounds can and can't do. So some of this will apply to other rounds, but most of it is specific to Solid Shot rounds. Um, so the first thing I want to talk about is what is Solid Shot actually good for? Because if you've played with Solid Shot, you probably realize the Solid Shot is not a super nice round. It's not easy to use, it's not user friendly, and it usually takes a lot of shells to kill stuff. So what is it good for? Well, I mean, it's a several kilogram piece of metal flying thousands of feet per second through the air. It's gonna kill stuff, and it's gonna kill stuff very, very hard. Um, Stuff like crew, engines, ammo, and fuel all are very weak to Solid Shot. Uh, Especially things like APDS and to an extent APCR. Uh, these will do massive damage to internal modules. They also do very well against unsloped armor and are very general purpose. Pretty much, if you're looking for the most basic, the most uh, general type of ammunition, this is it. This stuff can be used against any tank, any situation, at all times. It might not be the best round to use, but it certainly can be used. And that's what makes it very unique, because it's a jack of all trades, master of none, but it's also not very good at all the trades. Specifically, it's very poor against uh, heavily sloped armor, um, and open space tanks. And what I mean by that is tanks that are spread out on their interior, so it takes a lot of shots to kill the crew. And this is going to be the biggest downfall of this type of round, is you have to fire many shots into tanks to kill all the crew, and if there's a lot of space between crew, it's just going to take more ammunition and time, and that's very valuable, especially when you're trying to kill things quickly. Uh, it also can sometimes have bad post-penetration damage. It really depends on the shell and how much armor it can penetrate and how close to the... It basically just know that the closer you are to the maximum penetration you are, the less damage the round is going to do. Also, the rounds do less penetration over distance, and they lose a lot of penetration through sloping and angling. Um, so those are some pretty bad cons, and the pros aren't super great. I mean, it doesn't have splash damage, it doesn't have any kind of explosive inside it, so it doesn't kill crew even if it doesn't go directly behind them. Solid shot's kind of tricky. Um, so how do I use solid shot? Well, first and foremost, you need to remember that caliber doesn't matter. A solid shot round is a solid shot round. Because it doesn't have a high explosive center at all, uh, shooting someone with a 37mm solid shot is going to do the exact same thing as if you shot someone with a 100mm solid shot. It's going to kill them. Assuming you hit them, of course, it's going to kill them. So, really, if you are deciding which tank to bring, for instance the Cromwell, based purely on the size of its gun, well, you're not going to choose the best tank. The Cromwell 75 isn't actually any better than the Cromwell 57. In fact, I personally like the Cromwell 57 a lot more because it's got a better gun. And it's not because it has a larger caliber, it's because it has more penetration, and its solid shot round, which the British commonly use, is a lot better because it has the better penetration. Um, Also remember to aim for weak, minimally angled areas to maximize the penetration you're going to get and therefore the post-penetration damage you'll have with the solid shot rounds. Varying your targets is also a necessity. Not necessarily different tanks, but different areas on the tank. Continuing to shoot at the same area just because it penetrates will not kill tanks. And this is probably the most common problem I see with people trying to use solid shot is they continually try to shoot out their gunner or continually try to shoot the same area. You need to try and kill all the crew. And remember that crew will switch places after about 10 seconds. So shooting at your driver and then shooting at the driver again 5 seconds later, you're not going to do anything. So shooting at the driver, then shooting at the gunner, then shooting at the engine, then shooting at this, that, and the other thing, varying up where you shoot will yield you better results. Um, Also, because this doesn't have any splash damage, you need to know tank anatomy for your enemies in order to be effective with this round. That means you need to know where modules are, where crew members are. Remember that on certain American tanks, for instance, the gunner is on the left side if you're facing it instead of the right side. British tanks typically have the driver on the wrong side because they're British and they're fucked up like that. Just knowing your enemy will help you a lot with solid shot. Also, because of its lack of splash damage, you will rarely be able to one-shot enemies. This means that you're going to have to expect that you won't one-shot enemy, and you're always going to want to be 2 steps ahead. And what I mean by that is when you're firing your shot, you want to think about where you're going to move next and where you're going to shoot next. Sometimes you don't have to move at all. Sometimes you're going to have to flank around because you shot out an engine, now you want to get a nice side shot. Um, you need to think about what your next move is while you're making your current move. You have to be proactive with solid shot because very rarely do you one-shot people. And when you do one-shot people, it should really be a surprise to you. You should prioritize disabling the enemy over killing them. Um, because it's so rare, shooting someone and going for the ammo rack every single time if you don't have APDS will not always yield you an ammo rack explosion. It will some of the time, but not all the time. So, instead, maybe aim for the driver and try and put yourself in a position where the driver happens to be right in front of or right behind an ammo rack, and maybe you get a driver kill and an ammo rack explosion, or an ammo rack is yellowed, so the next turn you might, or the next shot you'll be able to destroy it. Um, Similarly, with tanks that have ammunition in their turret, trying to shoot their gunner out and also hit some of that ammunition can start a tank. Can destroy a tank. So kind of remember that you don't want to go for the kill shot every single time. You're gonna want to disable before you kill, because solid shot will not consistently kill things in one shot. Um, and with solid shot, you want to eliminate your enemy's ability to kill you above anything else. This means that if you are in a position where they can't shoot you but they can run away from you, you need to stop their mobility, because that's what's going to kill you, is they're going to get away and be able to get their gun back on you. That being said, if they're in a position where they're going to shoot you, then you need to kill their ability to shoot you and deal with their ability to run away later. Um, Usually what this is these are your first two shots. This is disabling the way to kill you and disabling their ability to run away. And if you don't kill their ability to kill you, you kill their ability to um, run away. And then with the second shot, you do the opposite. So, for instance, if you kill their driver, your next shot's going to want to kill their gunner or their gun breach. Or if you kill their gun breach, your next shot's going to either be in their engine or in their driver, so that they stop, or in their transmission. Um, Basically, this alternation between mobility and killing you is going to be how you kill crew. Uh, Also note that in anything other than arcade battles, a shot to the transmission or engine will stop a tank for a considerable amount of time. So these are great ways to kill mobility on your enemies. However, not all the time will this kill a crew member, which is uh, it's a necessity for when you're trying to kill tanks with solid shot. And usually your kills with solid shot are going to come from crew kills and ammo rack explosions. Sometimes they'll be from fires, sometimes they'll be from, miscellaneous bullshit. Uh, but most of the time it's going to be from trying to kill crew and accidentally, quote unquote, killing an ammo rack. Usually crew members happen to be around ammo racks, so shooting through ammo racks in order to kill crew is good practice, because it kills two birds with one stone. Very literal sense. So that's kind of some of the tips on how I use solid shot in general. I'm going to go through how to engage tanks from the front, sides, and rear, some of the things to aim for and whatnot. Okay, so we have a Cromwell here, and we're looking at a Panzer IV. So using the Cromwell's solid shot, we are going to want to kill this Panzer IV as quickly as possible. Now we know that the Panzer IV is a pretty easy thing to shoot at, because its armor isn't super great. So when we're looking at it from the front, we can really aim anywhere and we don't have to worry too much about it bouncing. I mean, there are still parts that will bounce, but for the most part we can penetrate it. So the first place to look is the driver. In this case, the driver isn't the most important thing. We're in the middle of an open field. This guy is aiming at us. There's a whole bunch of indicators saying we need to shoot his gunner. So that's going to be our first objective here. Because he's looking at us, and because there's really nowhere for him to run, we're going to want to take out his ability to shoot us back before we worry about his ability to run away. So if in this case we had the choice, I would definitely take the gunner shot over the driver shot. So from the side, it's a little bit different story. In this case, he can still run away. I mean, there's really nowhere for him to run. But if there was, let's say, a building right here, we might want to shoot his engine or his driver, his transmission, to try and get him to stop. But this guy also has a pretty fast turning turret and a gun that's pretty dangerous. So another option to do is to shoot out his gun breach and gunner and try and kill his turret, which will stop him from shooting us. And this is kind of the which one might be better. It depends on a lot of different things, namely the reload speed of your gun and your confidence in your ability to hit people. I mean, right now we're about 20 meters away, so I hope everyone feels pretty confident about these shots, trying to hit them. But if they were 1,000 meters away, I might feel a little bit less confident about those shots, and I might just try and put somewhere where I kill a lot of crew, um, and just try and aim for the center mass. It just kind of depends. Really, the side shots are the ones that are you're going to take the most and you're going to learn the most about. So this is kind of up to personal preference. It's not so much about which one's better all the time. It's really which one's better for the certain situation you're in. So the next thing we're going to do is look at the rear. Now the rear is interesting because the crew for the most part is blocked off by the engine block. The engine is a big hunk of metal, and you might as well think of it as an impenetrable object until we get to things like APDS and heat FS and things that have got silly amounts of penetration and they can actually shoot through engine blocks. But with your standard AP round or APHE round or anything you're shooting at, really the engine block might as well be an impenetrable amount of armor. Being said, it can be set on fire and it counts as mobility kill, which is awesome. So aiming for the engine block is certainly a good thing to do, especially considering this guy isn't turning his turret towards us and he doesn't really have a whole lot of chance to shoot us. So from the rear, typically my first shot is into the engine block, and then with my second shot, I'll follow it up with a side. Usually they'll turn their turret to the side, and you get a nice side shot, destroying their gun breech and taking out their gunner. This is a very common way I kill people from behind. Then, if once they're destroyed with their mobility and their gun, I'll drive around to the side of them and try and get a flank shot on them. Now, if we're dealing with a tank with a lot more armor than we can penetrate, like this Panther, uh, usually it's better to just not engage. These heavily armored tanks with solid shot really only have a few areas that you can penetrate. And if you remember what I said about varying your shots, if you only have one or two areas you can penetrate, you can't really vary your shots and try and kill the maximum amount of crew. So you can continually try to take out someone's gunner or maybe their driver or whatever it is. And it's going to take a very long time and a whole lot of ammunition to try and kill every last person inside this tank because, well, it's just going to take a while. So, what's best to do is maybe shoot off a track, maybe try and distract them, get away, and come and get a flank shot on them. This is an ideal scenario, obviously. I mean, this Panther D would be brain dead if he let a Cromwell go from sitting duck right in front of him to go on his side. But it's the idea that you want to get to the sides and rear of people with with solid shot, just because you can do a lot more damage from there. You've got better views on the driver and gunner. There's usually less armor, and there's a whole lot more ammo racks in those areas. So getting to the sides of people with your solid shot rounds is very, very crucial. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the uselessness of APCR. And I think every single time that APCR comes up, I want to point this out because APCR is absolutely useless. It is the worst round in the game. Don't use it, don't use it, don't use it. Ever. On any tank, ever. Ever. Terrible. I can't think of a single use for APCR. It's bad against sloped armor. Just about every single armor in the game is somewhat sloped, and the armor that isn't sloped usually can be penetrated with your normal solid shot round. So there's no reason to use APCR in this game. If you're firing at a Tiger with a 75mm gun, well, usually, unless you're using the really stumpy 75, you're able to penetrate that armor. If you can't penetrate that armor, then yeah, you might want to use some APCR because the Tiger's got really flat armor and it might be effective. That being said, if you're shooting at a Panther, if you're shooting at a T-34, if you're shooting at anything with any kind of sloped armor, APCR suddenly becomes just a wet noodle that you're trying to throw with a slingshot at them. It's really useless. Don't use it. Don't use it. Don't ever use it. It's not good. It is useless. And I could go on for hours on why it's bad, and most of it would be because it's useless. So that's pretty much all I have to say about solid shot. APDS is fantastic. Regular solid shot's okay. Uh, if you have the option, use APHE. So yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later.